Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Tillet, the style leader in hospitality workwear and hotel and restaurant uniforms. Learn more at tilletnyc.com. Meat and 3 is back. We're kicking off our 4th season and celebrating HRN's 10th anniversary with a very special episode about our home, Brooklyn.
Roberta's was such an interesting place with such a strong gravitational pull. It attracted all these different groups.
The neighborhood has changed a lot over the past decade, from its culinary renaissance to the complicated implications of gentrification.
I would say the majority of the people who are members of our co-op definitely have a certain purchasing power, are mostly white, and we are trying to change that.
We're taking you on a journey that spans the birthplace of food radio to buzzy neighborhood pollinators to the transformative health journey of our borough president.
That was my moment of, wow, someone has thrown me a life raft and I'm going to take it.
Subscribe to Meat and 3, that's MEAT+THREE, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to A Hungry Society. I'm Portia Wilson, and this is the show where we talk about food, food media, and so much more. Today's show is really fun. It's an interview with Chef Mashama Bailey and Johno Morisano, the duo behind the Grey and Grey Market in Savannah, Georgia. The Grey is actually located in a former Greyhound bus station that operated until 1964, which means it ran through the Jim Crow era and segregated black and white passengers. Today, this space is home to The Grey, which is one of the most celebrated restaurants in America, where Mashama is cooking dishes inspired by her upbringing in Savannah and Queens, New York. So Mashama has been the subject of an episode of Chef's Table on Netflix, which you should watch if you haven't. And this month, she won the James Beard Foundation Award for Best Chef Southeast. Johno has been at The Grey since the beginning. He's the founding partner and works front of the house in the restaurant occasionally. On a recent Friday afternoon, I met with both of them at Johno's Manhattan apartment near Gramercy Park. While we're talking, you're going to hear cabs going by. You're going to hear, I think a dump truck came by at some point. You're going to hear all of the New York sounds. And it was just a great afternoon where we drank wine and we talked about the pressures of running such a historic restaurant and what a business partnership between a black chef and a white co-founder looks like. Maybe it's because we weren't in the studio, or maybe it's because Mashama and Johno are so warm and personable, but the conversation is very intimate. You're going to hear that, and it shows how committed they are to The Grey. I think food critic Bill Addison put it best when he wrote this about The Grey in 2017. At a time when Southern cuisine has soaked up the limelight for at least the last 15 years, The Grey synthesizes much of what's relevant about this moment in American dining. It's an amalgamation of global and regional flavors, a big city chef making a seismic impact in a smaller town, and an acute awareness of and reckoning with complex racial, economic, and cultural histories. I really hope you like this episode, and thank you so much to Mashama and Johno. All right, so we are here. It's Friday. We're having some rosé, some bubbles.
Some bubbles on a Friday.
Yes, and I'm so excited to be here with you two. And can you tell me about what the last 6 months have been like for both of you?
The last 6 months has been crazy, really, right, Johno? Because we opened up the gray market about 6 months ago, and I have been trying to figure out how to balance my time between both spaces. And I must admit that initially, like, I'm there, but I'm not there every day like I'm there for the gray. So there's a constant juggling act that's happening. And I don't know, like, who can relate, who has 2 jobs, or chefs out there with more than one restaurant. I just want advice on how to balance that and also stay in tune with the team. So that, for me, the last 6 months have been crazy for me with that. And also been writing.
Yeah.
And so Johno and I are coming out with a book. It's the title-ish is going to be called White, Black, and the Gray.
Or Black, White, and the Gray.
Or Black, White, and the Gray. And so I'm trying I've written a few essays and short stories, but I've never written anything at length. So yeah, open market, write a book,
I just feel like
win a James Beard.
The last 6 months have been equal parts a lot of work and a lot of celebration, which is starting. I think the combination of the two is wearing us down.
Oh, seriously.
Like it's been burning the candle at all 3 ends. It's been like, it's just been nonstop. I mean, it's been awesome. And I think for the first time ever, since we've been doing this, we are actually taking a little bit of time to appreciate that while we still have a lot to do, I think we feel like we always have a lot to do and a lot more to accomplish, and not even accomplish, that's the wrong word, a lot more to strive for is probably a better way to put it.
Or achieve.
Yeah, we've taken a little bit of time. Like, Mashama winning the James Beard was the most un-anticlimactic thing ever. Like, it was exactly like as I would have expected to feel, which was elation and
relief,
joy and relief. And it was a total emotional release. Like, I just literally started bawling, and I cried for like 2.5 days.
But I think for you specifically, you tend to push and go. And for me, I do tend to celebrate the little things. I'm like, I didn't fuck up the order this week. Woohoo! Let's have a party.
And I'm always like, what's next? What's next?
And I'm like, well, I did. We when we had the Eater article.
That was the first time I cried over what we were doing.
Yeah, but that was sort of like the first time where I was like, yes, all right, we're on the right track, because we kept gunning for those types of things or wanting to be in that conversation, and that was the intent from the moment we started. From the moment we started, we both agreed that our goals were very similar in the way that we wanted to be part of the national conversation. So, having that article in Eater was just huge for us. And
when they named us best restaurant.
Yeah, and so I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Did it make you feel like someone understood what you were doing? Like what you were...
I think, having seen Bill Addison in the restaurant, I think he genuinely, truly understood what we were doing. Like, I think he got it. Like, he had been there when we opened, and he even said this when he wrote about us. He's like, I thought it was good when it opened, and that's what I thought about it. I thought it was good, but I knew that they were going somewhere. And then he came back and he said, he's like, I get it, and I was so awkward with him in the dining room. It was like, because he came like 3 days in a row, and I wasn't sure, am I supposed to talk to him? Am I supposed to leave him alone? And Mashama's just always like cool as a cucumber. And I'm like, Bill Addison's at the back. She's like, I know Bill Addison's. I ran into him as he was walking in the restaurant.
He's walking in a restaurant. I was walking out, and I was like, what are you doing here? Because I didn't know him forever, and then I finally met him at a Southern Foodways conference in Oxford, Mississippi, and the first time I met him, I was having a conversation with him and did not know who he was. And everyone in the room it was like an inside joke for everyone else in the room because, you know, at the Southern Foodways, you walk around with name tags, and he was the only one who didn't have a name tag on. So I was just like talking to this.
Yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't obvious for me. I had no idea. So I'm just like, yeah, you know, so like food is like life. And he's just kind of like, whatever. And so when I finally figured out who he was, and I saw him walk into the Grey, I was just like, this is so, I just thought he was like, it was so, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together, and that just goes to show like I'm just at work.
And I remember like I was sitting at the Gate 2 bar in the restaurant, which is kind of where we sit during the day and work before service, and you know, an alert comes up on my computer like Eater, you know, the Grey, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is, and I read it, and I was floored. I was
he
floored.
Called me. He was like, Mashama. Mashama, have you seen it?
It was true. I was busted up. I was.
And I was on my way. I was coming from somewhere. I wasn't coming from home, but I was on my way downtown. And I just kind of made a beeline to his house, and he was like, "I'm on my way back." And it was, oh God.
All right. Let's. What other questions you got, Portia? Come on.
Let's talk about it.
Let's move on from this.
Let's talk about all the times he's cried.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get on with this now.
So, I mean, I feel like that points out a couple of things. One is, I feel like that moment is, you know, there's these moments in food where people like to view, like once you win the Beard Award, they're like, oh, the overnight success of so-and-so. And it's like, this has been a long time coming.
Oh, yes.
Especially for you.
I've been cooking for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years.
The overnight success of 20 years.
I know, of 20 years. So I'm a career changer. And I went to school for psychiatry, and I ended up working in social work. And then from there, I was working in a homeless shelter, and we were doing sort of like these potlucks. And the reason why I started cooking is because people like my food. They thought I was a good cook, and and that made me feel good. And that's really what pushed me to go into the culinary field, because people ate my food and they felt good. And then by the end of the meal, they were laughing, and we were having this whole dynamic conversation, and I fit in. I felt like this was a very comfortable place for me to interact with other humans, and that's really what started it. I wasn't driven by chefs or restaurants or anything. I was just driven by really just having company, you know, having people over.
Yeah. And for me, you know, I thought about the Grey when I was 45 after like a career in sort of entrepreneurship and media and the arts, and I feel like the Grey is the culmination of everything I had done before that, because I was a lover of food and wine, like really a lover, like, you know, and the term foodie is not one I would ever hope to put on any person on the planet, but my wife and I just traveled for food and wine. That's what we did, and trying to build businesses, because what I did for a living, you fail, you know, 90% of the time. And when I decided to build a restaurant, it was here I could take everything I had learned about businesses and startups, and my background as an accountant, and my background in production, film and television production, and because the dining room's a show every night, right? And you're basically, you know, giving the guests this very cohesive experience if you do it well. And I don't think I really appreciated how much of my life and my life experience was going to be applicable until the night we opened the restaurant. And I was scared shit for like 18 months, like literally every night on the floor. I remember the first night I did wine service, my hand was shaking and like spilling wine on a guest, like, because I'd opened 9 million bottles of wine in my life, but never really, you know, someone who was paying us to do it. And yeah, so like, I just think of myself as anything but an overnight success. You know, I just think like, oh my God, we've worked hard.
Yeah. I think the best things in life, you're not quite prepared for it. I think all of your experiences come together to make you prepared for it. But even listening to both of you talk, it seems like you two fill the gaps in like your business partnership. Like, I think we were talking about last night about how you are, very
A-type personality. yeah.
And and Mashama, you're a bit more like relaxed and like it'll be okay.
It's all gonna work out.
Yeah.
We're not saving lives here.
Yeah.
It's just dinner.
Yeah.
It's just dinner. I freak out. Like I have my moments. For sure. And I think it's funny because in the beginning, when I would have like an outburst or a breakdown and, Johno would try to like, and it's just kind of like, you don't understand. But now and then vice versa. Now I think we have a little bit more of an understanding. We know exactly where the other's intentions lie. And we're very honest with each other. And I think that one of the best parts about this partnership for me is really being open with my communication and really being vulnerable about my needs and my wants from this partnership. And once I felt like I could express that, then it was like sort of like, oh, well, then the gloves are off. So if I need time for myself.
That took a long time, though.
It did. And I remember like every time.
For both of us. I'm not just for Mashama. I mean, just to be vulnerable to each other. And I love the use of that word. I mean, that's really what we are.
There was a conversation that we had about a year and a half ago, and I wanted to sort of renegotiate like my initial sort of partnership, because I really start to feel a oneness with the gray itself. And I was in tears the whole conversation.
So was I.
And
here we are again.
The entire that's number 37, by the way. So I was in tears the whole conversation just because I had to ask for what I wanted. It wasn't. It had. In hindsight, I didn't really feel like it needed to be emotional. Like I didn't feel like I was in pain or I was saying something that I shouldn't have said, or I was embarrassed, or whatever sort of sparks an emotion to cry. But I've never really had the opportunity to ask for what I wanted in a partnership or ask for what I wanted in a relationship, really. And so asking for that and him being very receptive and accommodating, it was very unexpected. I thought I was gonna have to like fight for it. I thought it was gonna get really like heightened and more emotional, even though I was crying.
The interesting thing about that meeting, which is exactly as Mashama describes, is it wasn't a financial negotiation that Mashama was trying to have with me, because you start a business, it's like there's you put the money in and you sort of figure out the equity structure, which we did, and Mashama's been a partner in the business from the beginning. She wanted more partnership interest, but it wasn't about the money. That was the funny part. It was about what she said, feeling this oneness with the gray. And she started, I think the thing that we never really appreciated early on is what the gray was going to sort of represent that was larger than food, and what this partnership represents. And Mashama, and she hates when I do this, so she'll correct me after this. I'll put some words in her mouth. Like her feeling that she was representing all of the people who came before her in the South, and that she, in order to feel connected to the thing, she's like, I want to be able to say this. I want to be able to scream it from the rooftops, because you really struggled in the beginning, even using the word partner or partnership. And I was always like, we are, and collaboratively and financial, I'm like we are. And it was that wanting to connect with it, which was the thing that was so emotional for the two of us, because we, the financial part of it was easy. It was her expressing this desire to be connected,
to feel ownership, and at first it wasn't so, like the first 2 years it was like tiptoeing around, like I'm not sure what it means, like there's a certain amount of sweat equity and like I get a salary, and sort of like it was sort of like, what does all that mean? I'm not quite sure. So I just referred to myself as executive chef because those were terms that I understood. And even last night at the Luminary dinner, and Marcus Samuelson put me on a spot in front of the whole dining room and was like, "Go ahead, girl, go out there and talk about yourself." And I was like,
well, he called you executive chef too.
And then he called me executive chef, and then Johno yelled from the crowd, "Partner!"
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right, yeah, I am a partner." And so still,
the media doesn't like calling Mashama partner either. I don't know why, but they don't.
I mean, you know what? Also, like, I think the media just sort of is a vessel, and they dictate what I'm putting out there, or what we're putting out there. And if I'm not owning it, they're not going to own it either. So it's really about me just sort of like owning that partnership, owning it. And that conversation was, once we had that conversation, once I understood and realized and accepted the fact that I wasn't working for him. And I think in the beginning, I felt like I was working for him. And I was just like, oh, I'm not working for him. We're working together.
We're working for each other.
Even though he said it every day, and even though he was very vocal and very clear about what he wanted from the partnership, I could not grasp and accept the fact that this was the role that I was stepping into. I still thought like, I was reporting to him or answering to him. And I think once I got comfortable with that part, that's when we got more comfortable with our dialogue.
So you said that, well, both of you said that, the Grey is such an expression of you. When did you start to feel that and feel comfortable in that?
I think probably around the second year, I think. I really started to connect with some of our purveyors. And one of the purveyors, his name is Ernest McIntosh, and he's an oysterman, and one of the most gorgeous men you'll ever meet, and strong, manly hands, and he's just been on the water.
And his son is handsome, and
his son is handsome, and everybody. And so I think understanding, listening to his stories and starting to understand the coast a little bit more and the heritage of Black folks in that area, I really started to want to speak from that place. And I really just found it important. In the beginning, a lot of people of color rallied around me because I think they didn't see anything like me before. They didn't see a Black woman in a partnership with a white man in a restaurant that was grand. Like, the Grey isn't a bus station, and we follow a fine dining, sort of format for our dining experience, for our diners, and the food is unusual and clean and has very classic techniques. And so to see a Black woman at the helm of that, a lot of people were nervous about it, or they were like shy away from it. And working with people who help that dinner happen, who grow the food for those dinners, and understanding how they are the third generation and fourth generation person working in that area, that's when I started to really start to understand that I need to look at my grandmothers and look at my cousins and my aunts and think about the food that I grew up with and express it in that way versus trying to be, Miss New York City.
Yeah, I think that from the beginning, we always, everything we do at the Grey was, we wanted to be a chef-driven restaurant, right? That's what we wanted to be. So everything is in service to the food. The wine list is built around Mashama's style of cooking, right? That's why we only do old world wines at the Grey, because we don't want to overwhelm Mashama's food with gigantic cabs and gigantic shards and American style winemaking, which I love personally. And so we made all of those decisions, but the Grey, I think, really is an expression now of Mashama and me, and a lot of the people who've come through the doors, both on the guest front, like our regulars, have helped to sort of shape what the Grey is. There are staff members that have been with us from day one, which is rare in the restaurant business, especially in Savannah, which is not a restaurant town. So there was not professional staff in Savannah when we started. And so it's really become, I think kind of exactly what we wanted, which is an expression of everyone who comes through the doors, including the people who passed through the bus terminal, you know, back in the day, and where were they heading and what were they doing, and we think about that stuff, you know.
I mean, the Chef's Table, your episode is, you know, when you're talking about the Oyster Man, I'm thinking about the opening scenes. That episode is so beautiful. And I think that episode does a great job of explaining kind of the context and history and gravity of the Grey. Is it scary for either of you to run something that means so much to so many people?
Yeah, I always want to throw up, kind of. I mean, yeah, I mean...
Does it feel like pressure?
It does. It feels like pressure.
Feel like
yeah.
pressure.
Yeah, it is pressure. I mean, that's the part we didn't appreciate, you know? Like, we knew there was something special between us, like almost from the beginning, from when we met. And I don't know what the Grey means to people. Like, I don't know. I don't know what Mashama and I, or our relationship, you know, but people come up to you and they say, you know, you're a model, you know, John T. Edge in his book, The Potlicker Papers, calls us a model for the New South. And I disagree with John T. in person on this. I hate that term, the New South. Right? I don't know anything about the South. I'm a carpetbagger from New York City. You know, I don't want to claim any ownership over the South, or, you know, because I think that's just wrong. But I think the South is really dynamic, and I think that it's having a dynamic moment. And I think that what is going on in food and the foodways, and recognizing people like Mashama and people who look like Mashama, who are the people who basically created all of this, whether they wanted to or not, they didn't. I think that that's really interesting, and I'm glad that people are taking notice of it from a personal point of view, because I think it's an important message to get out there, but it mostly feels like pressure. Yeah, it does.
Really beautiful, poignant pressure.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, I said this to you last night. I feel lucky to be a witness to it, and that's really fulfilling and rewarding, and I don't feel anything more than a witness to it who happens to be caught up with a really wonderful woman doing something that I really love.
No, that's nice. Thanks.
Yeah.
Do you feel pressure to cook?
I feel pressure to cook, to feed people, to staff, to lead. I feel
to tie my shoes in the morning.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to turn off. I feel like I feel like there's so much to do, and I think that people's expectations are so high for us. There are people who travel to Savannah once a year and they come back every year, and you want it to be delicious, and you don't want to read the reviews where it's like, well, the first time it was great, but the second time it wasn't.
Resting on their
and
laurels.
You want
that's
it,
a recent one.
And you want it. You don't want people to be disappointed by what you're doing. And because of that, it goes all the way down to the dishwasher putting things in the right place so you're not distracted during a push when you're trying to look for something. Yeah. So I think that just the entire systematic development of how the business is run is pressure for me, because it's something that is very different from cooking.
And you're feeling that a lot right now, because Mashama's mantra right now is systems.
Yeah, because I'm moving around, and I'm not, I'm there mostly, but I do see in the near future that I'm going to be moving around, and I want to be able to take a vacation. I haven't taken a vacation for 2 years. Wow. So I want to be able to go away for a week and say, okay, I'm away for a week, and I don't feel like everything needs to funnel through me in order for it to get done. Right. And I think in those times when you can step away, especially for me as I'm doing this and we're going into our 5th year, it's important for me to have some creative space. It just is. And I kind of never understood why artists or chefs or creative people need that, but I think you do. You need to eat someone else's food. You need to see someone's art. You need to, smell a different air. You just kind of need to move away and be inspired through music or words or whatever. And so in order for me to do that, I have to prepare the staff to run in a way that is like I was there. Mm-hmm. So that is pressure for me right now.
Yeah, the last 5 years are not repeatable, given from the point of view of how many hours we put into the Grey. Like, we couldn't do another 5 years like that, or we would both fall over.
It's just not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It's not, and it's not fair. It's not. And you know what? The other thing that's unfair about it is that's the tone you set for your staff. Is that we work 80 fucking hours a week, and so they feel like if they're not working 80 hours a week, they're not keeping up.
Yeah, and then it's hard to hire like that.
Exactly.
Because people are intimidated by the model.
Our reputation around town is that we're a really hard place to work for because we work so hard. Mm-hmm. And we pay the same as everybody else because the economics of the restaurant, that's my favorite review. It's like, it's overpriced. It's like, really, come look at our books and tell me how overpriced we are. But when you're asking people to work harder, I think, than any other place in town, and get paid the same and get the rest of your fulfillment from what we're doing for each other, it's a hard, sometimes that's a hard one to sell,
And you're like, we're cool and all, but you got to work like 20 extra hours a week. And they're like,
for the same amount of money.
They're like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Especially, the this business, like I admire what Danny Meyer's doing at Union Square Hospitality and what the guys at Fat Rice just did in Chicago and how they're trying to compensate their back-of-house staff. Mm-hmm. In Savannah, we can't do that because unless everybody does it, then it's just economically not going to happen because we won't have any staff when we tell our front-of-house staff that you no longer get tipped. They just will go work somewhere else. So it's particularly a hard sort of story to sell to, guys who are being paid by the hour.
Right.
It really is.
Right. I totally feel both of you on the overwork thing. Yeah. As a freelance writer, like I had this terrible habit of saying to myself, if you're not working, you're not making money. Mm-hmm. Which is just
That's how we both grew up.
Yeah.
That's how we all grew up.
Same.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like at some point it's okay to watch something on Netflix or to read something for pleasure or to, like, my husband and I just booked like an Airbnb on the beach for 2 days.
Nice.
Like, and it's just 2 days.
It's just 2 days, right? But how long did it take you to come to the 2 days, right? Like 5 years.
Yeah, I think when you grow up, like I said about myself once, I just hustle. Right, that's what I've been doing since like I'm 11 years old when my brother gave me his paper route. Like that's the last time I remember not working all the time. And when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a chef, when you're a freelancer, it's like if you're not out there driving business, nobody's driving it for you, right? And you get in that mentality. And I said this to one of the guys on our team a few weeks ago. It's like, dude, I don't want you working like this. I really don't. And don't use me as your model. And I'm not going to hold you to that standard. I really don't want you to. And I want us to get to the point, systems, where, 50 hours a week is a good week. 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week is not, it's not sustainable.
It's not the goal.
Yeah.
So you're one of the rare examples, I shouldn't say rare, one of the few examples of like a business partnership that works really well. I'm curious if you both have advice on how to pick business partners. What should you look for in someone that you work with?
I don't know. I look for someone that you're not intimidated by. When I first met Johno, I was like, oh, all right. I could talk to this guy.
She described me as a nerd, which I've
He was very Orville Redenbacher. He had the bow tie on and the glasses, and I thought I was gonna see
Here I am, think of myself as riding Harley Davidsons and tattooed, and she's like, he's just nerdy.
He's a nerd. I was like, he's a nerd. I'm good. Yeah. I like nerds.
There was 2 young ladies that came into the Grey about 2 weeks ago, and I can see they wanted to talk to me, like, when a table either wants to meet Mashama or talk to me because of Netflix or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they're opening a restaurant in Portland, Maine, and they asked me that very question because they were about to hire their chef, who they were going to bring in as a business partner. Wow. And I think the best advice is you have to go with your gut. Yeah. Like, when I was looking for a business partner, I met 10 chefs. And not one of them, they were good cooks. Like, a couple of them household names. Like, if I said the name, you would be like, oh, yeah, that person. But none of them struck me as business partners. And the moment I saw Mashama's face, and it was down in the lobby that you just came in, this is where we had our first meeting, I was like, oh, I could just, Mashama radiates, you can see it. And I just knew immediately from Gabrielle's description of her, Gabrielle Hamilton, who introduced us, the chef owner of Prune. From Gabrielle's description and Mashama's face, I was like, oh God, I hope she could cook because I could so be in business with this woman. And that's just how I felt. And for me, it was done right there.
But you have way more experience than I do at those types of things.
And I made a lot of, not bad decisions, but I've also worn out business partnerships. I split up with a business partner after 15 years, and that happens. It happens, and we just went in different directions. It's just the way it goes. Mm-hmm. I don't think Mashama and I ever will, though. I don't. I really don't. I think that
too tired.
Yeah. It's no, I think that this one. I think we're going to run this one as far as we can run it. Mm-hmm. I think we will.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I'm a little scared though.
But that's my advice. Go with your gut.
A little
Sorry.
Scared of what?
Yeah, what are you afraid of?
I'm for everything. Johno's a big thinker, and so I think that there's a lot of me, just not me being in uncharted waters, and I think that's really where I'm a little bit like.
Last week,
right,
I don't know,
dude.
there was an announcement. Fox Media did a deal with David Chang's media company, and I called up Mashama. I'm like, how come we don't have a media company? And she's like, will you shut up? All I heard was click.
That's what
it's
I'm
like, I come out of the media business. Why don't we have a media
That's
company?
what I'm talking about. If I was to say yes, I mean, I'm sure he's already working on it. But I'm sure.
Look out, David. We're coming for you.
But if I was to say yes, he'd be like, all right, great. And then I'd have 55 emails already. It'd be crazy.
I mean, there was, a new normal, it sounds like, for both of you, where it's this new life cycle of the Grey and your business partnership and opportunities and press and awards, and it seems like it's just an evolution of this partnership.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. It's almost funny. I'm starting to get in the habit of saying things if I want them to happen, and they're happening, right? So I'm like, oh, I wanted to move to the South and open a restaurant. Boom, lo and behold, I'm the executive chef and partner at the Grey Restaurant. I want to win a James Beard. That happened. I want to write a book. That's happening. So I'm sort of starting to not believe in myself or trust in myself, but starting to
believe and trust in yourself.
Believe and trust in myself, or starting to think about it and materialize how I can do it. Because for a long time, and especially growing up in inner cities, you kind of are around people who are big dreamers, and only a few of us make it out, especially at a young age. Only a few of us make it out of that circle or those circumstances. And all along, all I had to do was what I'm doing now. And, there's a lot of power in that, I think.
I ran one marathon in my life, and when I started the training program, the first piece of advice in the training program was tell everyone you're going to run a marathon, and I did. I'm like, I'm going to train for the marathon, because if you say it, you start to believe it, they start to believe it, they start to believe in you, and it happens.
You're claiming it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And that's what I was looking for. You're claiming it.
Exactly. And I think that the other thing that I don't think that Mashama and I are ever going to lose because of how we grew up. And we grew up kind of very similar backgrounds in that, like lower middle class families in the outer boroughs in New York City, is humility. Humility is really, really underrated in this business and a lot of businesses. And you see a lot of young chefs and restaurateurs start to believe the hype. And again, I'll go back to Danny Meyer. You're never as bad as they say you are, and you're never as good as they say you are. And you just have to stay grounded and keep your head down and do your job and find time for yourself. And, and I think that's one of the things that we came to this older, Mashama started her cooking career later than a lot of chefs. I got into the restaurant business in my mid-40s. Life has already kicked the hell out of us, and so it's easy to keep your humility when you're sort of a little wiser. And that's another piece of advice I would give to, all these folks who are going through, this. Yeah.
So let's talk about your book. I mean, from the sounds of the
it's sitting right there. We just got the rough pours are up on the counter right there.
Congratulations.
Well, there's still work to be done, but yeah.
He's like, Johno just shot me a look because I still have a lot of work to do. So I'm just like, that's pressure, It's like finishing that, and the release date was just moved up. So there's a lot to do in the next 2 months, and I'm hoping that. I can, if my sous chef is listening, I'm hoping that I'll have the time to do that.
You're talking about Trevor Elliott or Trevor Morris?
There's 2 Trevors?
No, there's actually one Trevor. And so I got up and I gave my James Beard speech, and I honestly didn't write anything down. I just sort of had a bunch of people I wanted to thank, and I went into the staff just sort of like freelanced, and I went Trevor Elliott and Trevor Morris, and really his name is Tim Morris. So then, like, they're watching. They had like a party, and I called his wrong name, and he was just like, ugh.
All of a sudden, everything that was Instagram was hashtag
Trevor Morris. I feel so bad. So I have to redeem myself in some way, but I think
he will never not be Trevor Morris.
No, I think he's more famous because of it, especially in Savannah. Everyone knows who he is, and he's like, oh, no one would be talking about you if she didn't say Trevor Morris.
So tell me about the concept for the book.
So the book is called Black, White, and the Gray, subtitled To Be Determined. We've been back and forth with our editor a lot on that. It's really the story of mine and Mashama's professional courtship and all of the things that come along with being carpetbaggers who moved down south. I mean, Mashama has a little history in Savannah, but I have none. And sort of all of the challenges that come along with that, challenges of race, class, culture, being good at what you do or striving to be good at what you do, and how this friendship and partnership developed out of it, and how we learned to trust each other dealing with all of our own sort of baggage and biases that you bring to any relationship, but a mixed race relationship in particular.
So what are some of those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge we confronted was trust, and being vulnerable to each other, and knowing that we would be there for each other when we fell down. And a lot of things get in the way of that, and that's kind of where inherent bias plays into it. For me, I grew up in really white, blue-collar, Italian and Irish Staten Island. Everybody I knew was a cop or a fireman, and this was in the 70s, and cops and firemen mostly viewed the neighborhoods that they worked in as the folks who inhabited those neighborhoods as almost like the enemy. And there's no way to grow up in that and not absorb it. And it wasn't until I met Mashama that I ever had to think about it. Because to me, I was like, a New York sort of progressive-minded person who lived in his little bubble. but I didn't know it was a bubble. I didn't know it was a bubble until I moved to the South and teamed up with Mashama, and then I realized I was living in a bubble. I think, you know, that's been hard. It's been hard to confront and hard to deal with, and it's hard to realize that you're not as wide-minded as you thought you were. And that's been, I mean, we were talking a little bit about this last night, you know, and you're in a mixed race marriage. And your husband had to come to some of those same things. Yeah, I mean, it's, I was really glad to hear I'm not alone,
and
you know?
just even, you know, he sees the way that my earring just fell out.
That's all right.
He sees the way that I'm treated in certain situations.
Yeah.
Like, even at like the grocery store. It's, you know, and it's eye-opening.
I never had to witness that before. Like, I never knew it existed. Like,
You're
I probably
confronted
would have
with it.
called bullshit. I'm like, that doesn't happen anymore. That's
Right.
2010
Yeah,
or
but it's-
2015.
But it's funny, when we built out the Grey, you know, and I didn't think of it as a race thing, but I thought of it as a woman thing, and I thought of it as, you know, just maybe a class. You know, no one really listened to me. Like, you know, like if there was something that I saw and noticed, like there was this PVC pipe that, PVC pipe?
Yeah, PVC.
That went through the kitchen, which is an open kitchen, and it was plastic and it was stark white. And they were gonna leave it, you know? And they were like, you know, just like, all right, sweeping up the dust and everything. And I'm like, you can't leave this like this. We have to paint it or something, because it'd be so weird to walk in and see this white plastic pipe in the ceiling of this open kitchen. It just won't blend in. And no one listened.
I remember everyone would, you would say something and they would look to me for an answer.
Everybody did
Yep,
that. Everyone did that.
That happens.
So it was sort of like,
I'm like, she's the chef guy, I don't know.
Right.
yeah, and it'd just be like, so I would have to call him or you know, defer to Johno in order to get anything done.
But when I realized I was the same way, that was hard.
Yeah.
That was hard. Not, you know, don't feel sorry for me. That was
Right.
a hard thing to accept for me personally. I'm like, wow, I'm that guy. And we've been through a lot of shit, you know, some tragedy, and like at the Grey, and you know, Savannah is so black and white that there's no way not to. I think for Mashama and me, this book has been really cathartic, because we got through all this stuff in an almost unspoken way. Like, we never really talked about race and me being white and her being black, other than sort of joking around and how people respond to you. And in the book, we are really dig into it and really be honest. And like, our editor and our agent is like, that's bullshit. And if you're not going to tell the real story, then don't fucking write it. And unless you're willing to tell the real story and take ownership of the real story, which is another piece of advice we got recently, then don't write it. Nobody cares about you sort of glossing, you know, over the top of what you went through. Like, no one cares. And so we are, you know, really digging in and being really honest in stuff you wouldn't say out loud normally.
Does it feel cathartic for you as well?
For sure, yeah. It was hard so Johno basically wrote the manuscript, and he wrote a different manuscript before he shopped the manuscript, and then shopped the manuscript, and then it became a book about me and Johno. And once that came, then he sort of changed the whole thing. And I remember when he really was digging into the writing, he called me and said, listen, I'm going to start it with this tragic event that happened. And I was sort of like, okay. And then when he finished and he got all his feedback and everything, and he turned it over to me so I can lay over my commentary over it, it was hard to read. There were some sticky parts in it that I was just sort of like, I didn't know he felt that way. And I remember those moments, and I remember those outbursts. And I remember it being hard and emotional, but I didn't know that he felt that way. And so I sort of had to come to terms with what I wanted to say in those parts and understand and not be defensive. I felt like my first sort of go at it, I was very defensive. I was very sort of like, no. It wasn't, or what do you mean it was like that? It was like this. And I just wanted to kind of I want to be more vulnerable and more honest with just being human and accepting, mistakes, or really owning my position and where I stood in those moments, because I think that that's just being a human being.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's cathartic, for sure.
I think it sounds necessary as well. I think that with the gravity that's put onto the Grey and the story of the Grey and the location of the Grey, we have to have these
conversations, yeah, for sure.
I guess we all feel that way, but I don't know that we'll see.
Yeah,
we will
see.
We will see.
I think it'll be good.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be good.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be. I think the ones left standing are going to be the ones that need to be there anyway. So.
This episode is brought to you by Tillet, the style leader in hotel and restaurant uniforms. Tillet is redefining workwear for the hospitality industry, ensuring that you and your team feel great from stove to street. Tillet is a full line of workwear clothing from pants to work shirts, chef aprons, jackets, dresses, chef coats, and more, with over 95% of their garments produced in the USA. Each hotel and chefwear collection is timed with the seasons, comprised of exceptional functional fabrics and built to last. Custom uniforms can be tailored for your restaurant, hotel, or store. Learn more at tilletnyc.com. That's TILITNYC.com.
So I have some questions that I ask every guest on the
All
show about your relationship to dining. Do either of you have any early memories of dining when you're growing up? Were there any dining traditions your family had?
Big night out for us was I can remember two things. One is for baptisms, communions, and confirmations, we always went to a restaurant in Brooklyn called the New Corner, which was an Italian restaurant, and it was fancy as far as my family was concerned, and it was like a red sauce Italian place, and that was my parents would save up, to pay for that. And then every now and then they would take us to the Rustler Steakhouse, which was one of those kind of chains where you got the $3.99 ribeye and the Texas toast and the all you could eat salad bar, and I remember that being really awesome. And then my father worked in Chinatown as a fireman, and so Chinese food from a place called Leon's, and then when Leon's closed, Wo Hop, which is kind of a famous Chinese restaurant now, but it was that was our go-to Chinese food that my father would bring home maybe 2 nights a week, and we would eat that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
For me, not so much when we lived in Georgia, but when I was 11, moved up to New York City, and my grandmother was big on food. She was huge. And she would she would do dinner parties and all kinds of stuff. But for special occasions, we would either go to Sammy's on City Island.
Okay,
and,
I've heard of this.
Yeah, so we would go there for graduations and birthdays and stuff like that. And then for just sort of regular dining, we'd probably go to Red Lobster, or we would go to Sizzler, and those were sort of our special, congratulations, you did good.
Yeah.
My grandmother was an avid shopper. Her stress reliever was window shopping. So we would spend a lot of time at like, those big chain places in the mall because, we would get hungry because she would shop for 6 hours and drag us along, and we would just kind of lay around under the racks until she was ready to go, and then she would buy us, lunch.
Is Sammy's a place with I think they have like Henny Coladas or something.
Oh, I don't know.
No.
I was like Sprite or Coca-Cola. Yeah, Sammy's is the place at the end.
It's like a crab kind of shacky place. Yeah.
Okay, I gotta check it out. I've actually never been to City Island.
It's
you
pretty
need to go
cool.
there. It's cool.
Okay.
My mom grew up there.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Nice. So another question I ask is, can you tell me about one of the worst restaurant experiences you've ever had?
Do we have to name it?
No, you don't have to name the restaurant, but you can if you want to.
So I don't know if this is one of the worst, but it's one that I keep rolling around in my head. And I used to live in Bed-Stuy for a little bit. And there was this place that was sort of struggling, but it was this black-owned business. It was this young man who was opening up, who had like a health restaurant. It was like this health food place. And I would go there and get like smoothies or salads or a little lunch. You would have like just very clean food. And I respected it because in Black communities, you don't always have these healthy places to eat. So I wanted to patronize it every chance I got. It was like 2 blocks from my house. And one day I went in for lunch and I got a salad, and the whole time I think he was just having a bad day, I don't know, but he was sort of complaining about like not being supported in the community and not really liking cooking or not really liking the industry. And he was like making my food, and I packed it up and I paid for it and I went home, and there was like 2 rotten tomatoes in my salad. And it was so disappointing. I was just so disappointed because I wanted to support this guy. I wanted to support just the act of what he represented. And he didn't even believe in it in itself. And he was sort of making this food with these bitter hands, and I just felt really disappointed. And so that's sort of like I was one of my more disappointed moments in food.
Wow. I don't know if it's the worst dining experience, but when my wife and I were younger, we would try and go like once or twice a year to like a Michelin, fancy 2 or 3 starred place in New York City. And there was a place, one of the great chefs on the planet, had opened the New York City version of what he does. And we got in, and, it was immediately Michelin 3-starred, and it was just a really disappointing experience. The service was disappointing. The table linens were damp. Like it was just, and we half the things we ate were really good and half of the things we ate were And it wasn't the worst experience ever, but it was the last time I cared about Michelin stars, and that was like 15 years ago. And I just only eat in places that I just really like, and I think that really helped me think about the Grey and what I wanted the Grey to be,
Yeah. Wow. So from best to worst, do you have a favorite restaurant that you like to go to besides the Grey?
I'm not a restaurant person. I know that's hard.
That's hilarious.
I'm not.
God.
I
love restaurants. I'm like a restaurant brat.
He loves restaurants, and for me, like I never could afford it, honestly. And so I like to eat at places where chefs are dynamic, and I like to eat at places like that. But I'm not driven by that, and I feel so shitty saying it, but I can't shake it. Like I sort of am moved by the people. I'm not in the food. I'm not necessarily moved by the restaurant. So I think for me, I think that I would probably go to like I don't know. I go to places like Prune and stuff like that. And
Prune is one of my favorite places.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite places to eat. I worked there for 4 years, and she really taught me about food and cocktails and restaurants, and it just was very reminiscent on how we ate as a family and how we grew up at home. And I think that's probably one of my my favorite places. I like Impudo. It's like a ramen place, and I really love there. It's like fun and loud and dynamic, and I love that. I used to love Noodletown. I don't go there too much anymore, but I used to love eating there after work. I just don't have a ton of places that I frequent. I like to go and eat and experiment, but I don't have a place.
Do you like? Do you have like a favorite takeout spot or like place you order from?
Well, it's kind of hard in Savannah. I don't do a ton of that in Savannah, but I think probably the restaurant that I frequent the most there is like Green Truck Pub. It's not too far from my house. It's easy to, it's easy. It's relatable. It's healthy. I also like, who else do I like? There's this little Chinese takeout place that I just found there that I actually really like. It's called Cantonese Chef. And it's like this older couple, and they have their twin boys, and they kind of work there after school. So I think those are the two places that I kind of bounce back and forth when I'm not cooking. I would like go to the supermarket or go to the farmer's market and make food or eat at the restaurant.
Yeah. I have a ton of favorite restaurants.
Okay.
Yeah. He should have went first.
Down in our neck of the woods in Savannah, or in the South, I think Fig in Charleston is one of the America's.
See, he's so much more prepared because I really like
well,
Fig,
I do.
and I go there every time.
America's great spots. I think they.
It's so much
Mike
more
Latta
prepared
is a
than
great
I am.
owner, restaurateur, chef. Jason, who's the CDC there, just makes.
He's executive chef.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, executive chef. I apologize. Sorry, Jason. So I think that regionally, and really is one of my favorite places.
I agree with that.
Anywhere.
Really good.
I think my all-time favorite restaurant is a bistro in Paris because I lived in Paris when I was younger, so it was a really formative time in my food life. There's this place, I heard that Bourdain did, it made it to his show, and I didn't know that until recently, but it's called Chez Denise.
That sounds really familiar.
La Tour Montlery is like the full name of it, but it's like an old school bistro where the rumor is that she was a madam on the Rue Saint Denis, and she opened the restaurant like, I don't know, 50, 70 years ago. And the way she sort of gave back to the women who she used to run was she kept the restaurant open 24/7 Monday through Friday so that the working girls could come in, and she fed them for free.
Oh, wow.
And that was the rumor. And that place is just, up there. And then in New York, as a New Yorker, I eat in places. I love, there's a lot of places who are doing interesting dynamic things right now. Like Prune is, the reason I met Mashama is because I was always a huge fan of that restaurant. And then places nobody's ever heard of, like Echo, which is where I'm going tonight with my high school buddies,
Nice.
And it's just on Chamber Street, and it's like the Italian saloon version of like the Odeon. It's just kind of cool, and it's been there forever.
God, that sounds so awesome.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I could keep going, but
He can. I literally just cut him off.
I'm literally a
I'm like,
restaurant rat. Like I love them. I just love them. That's why I'm in the business.
I wish I had a better. I feel bad that I mentioned Fig. I love Fig, but I wish I had a better explanation. But I don't. I'm just sort of like I like the.
I really met Mike Latta, the owner of Fig, for the first time last week at the James Beards, and talked to him for like 10 minutes. And I was like, I love your restaurant. He's like, no thanks. And he's like, thanks. I'm like, no, I really, really love your restaurant. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
He's also a very handsome man.
Surrounded by handsome people.
I know.
So my last question for both of you: if you could have your last meal in a restaurant, where would it be, and who is invited? There are some follow-up questions to that.
Oh God.
You go first.
Oh, I know. I would have my last meal at Chez Denise. Although the gray really, it sort of factors in now, and I never used to think about it like that. But let's take the gray out of the equation. I don't think that's fair because I eat in the gray 4 nights a week after I get off work. Like Mashama's like, why do you eat here so much?
So annoying.
But I would have my last meal in Chez Denise, and I would eat the frisée salad, the pâté de campagne, and the haricots de mouton, which is chunks of lamb and white beans in a casserole. It's just ridiculously delicious, and it's comforting, and they have a house poured brouilly that they give you like a giant bottle of, and in a carafe, and it's just good.
Who's there with you? And keep in mind, you can invite.
It would be
celebrities, people you can have.
Yeah, it would probably be Carol, my wife, and I think Mashama.
That's table 3.
Maybe Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe Bruce Springsteen.
Okay.
But
that's very Jersey of you.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm really, you can take the kid out of Staten Island, but you can't take Staten Island out of the kid.
All right, it's my turn. I would probably go to, and this is going to sound real generic, but I'm okay with that. Carmine's.
Oh, really?
My grandmother, and I would invite my grandmother, who passed away right when the Grey opened. She passed away like 2-3 months after the Grey opened, and I was really close to her right before she passed away, and I had left and went to Savannah about 8 months before and opened up, went to start to open up the Grey. And it was one of her favorite places to go and eat. And it's just really easy, right? It's just red sauce and, super easy place to eat. And the wine list isn't that, I'm not going to say it isn't that good, but it isn't that dynamic. And, it's just kind of.
It's not challenging.
It's ordinary.
Yeah.
Like, it's just an ordinary place. And she loved it. And I think she loved it because, she loved Italian food, like Italian American food. She loved family style, loved sort of sitting at a table and eating with everyone and passing around and trying different things. And it was just loud and communal. And so I think that would probably be the place because she would be with me. And then, I would invite my cousins and all the people who sort of helped, who she opened eyes to, and she was very she was just a girl from Queens, and she really decided to not let that define her, and she became a nurse, and she was a private nurse and traveled and ate out and shopped, and so I think she really did well for herself, and she exposed that to her children and her grandchildren, and that's who would be at the table.
And my whole family. It's now they're like, you suck. Mashama loves her family,
So 2 things. Have you been to Carmine's since?
I've been to not since my grandmother's passed, no. I haven't.
That sounds like a fantastic event, maybe. Take over Carmine's.
That'd be cool.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's selfish.
Yeah.
I would want to attend.
Yeah.
Are you drinking anything off the list? Are you bringing your own?
I'm probably, I don't know, actually. I don't think I was even into wine when I was, when we were eating there. I would probably let Johno pick out the wine.
I get to come?
You get to come. Oh, yeah, Johno gets to come. And Carol.
Fine. It'd be a Chianti.
Sounds
I mean, you're in Carmine's, right?
Yeah. In the basket?
Of course, like the wicker. Yeah.
Totally.
The
old school.
Yeah.
Gotta do it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I know you both have intense schedules and a lot to do.
We're done. It's Friday.
Yeah.
Yes. I should, let listeners know we've been sipping on rosé.
But just a little. I mean, barely a glass each. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing.
No.
It's It's happy hour.
Yeah, almost.
Almost.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It's happy hour somewhere.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank
really
you.
Fun.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.